we could collect everybody's their license number, and I'll give credit for this 1 hour presentation. I'll give CE credit on the house.
We love that even better. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. I don't know how we can do that. I don't know if it'll go into the chat or not, and if so, I guess
that I email you after the meeting if that's okay.
That sounds absolutely great. All I need are names and license numbers, similar to any other class. So, and what I'll do is I will email back a copy of the slides, the handouts that I used.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, perfect. I'll go on ahead and I'll just get this thing. Let's see. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. Okay. Can y'all see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. Perfect. All right. So I've never used this presentation style, so I'm going to try and see how this works. I can't see anybody right now. I don't know if y'all can see it. Did it change slides for y'all? Okay, good. Yep. Good. I will go back one. We're going to be talking about ins and outs of land deals, some things that I've seen before that have caused problems. I know most of y'all at Farm and Ranch deal with Farm and Ranch. These are some issues that I've seen. Also, I was asked to talk about easements and mineral rights, so we are going to cover that as well. Disclaimer here, I'm not a lawyer. I'm actually an economist, so this isn't setting up an attorney-client relationship. We couldn't do that anyway because, again, I'm not an attorney. But the information here is based on the law. Now, individual circumstances, of course, if you have a big question, you would need to get an attorney involved because every single scenario is a little bit different. First of all, kick it all off with easements. Easements are always a big question. What are they? How do you get them? What are the different types of easements? An easement is actually a right for one person or entity to cross or use property of another for a purpose. We normally think of like power lines or roads or pipelines. It could also be an easement to cross your land to get to another person's land. Now, there's a bunch of different types of easements that are out there. There are what we call express easements. We'll talk about those. Implied easements, easements by necessity or prior use easement, prescriptive easements, and then also an easement by estoppel. We'll go through over each one of these, letting you know what they are. The first one is an express easement. This is the one that you always want. It's written. It's a written easement. It's a written document. It grants specific rights to an individual or a company, and it helps the estate owner to say, okay, this is what you can and cannot do as you're using my land. It must be in writing and recorded in the deed of records to be effective. It's not effective if you have an expressed easement and it's not recorded. It's a written easement is effective against a person who granted it, and without it being filed, it cannot be enforced. So in other words, if I have an easement for you to cross my property to get to your property, and then I sell that my own property, unless I have this express easement in writing, the next owner may or may not have to grant you access. Again, someone buys a grantor's property and tells them you don't have access anymore, you can't cross my land. If you have an express easement, that's going to supersede what that new owner says. If you have an oral easement right now or a written easement that's not recorded, go on ahead and get that thing recorded with the county, get it in writing. Another one is an easement by necessity. This comes up whenever property is divided, but no express easement has been filed. An example here would be landlocked property. A person seeking an easement by necessity has to show unity of ownership between the dominant and servant estates prior to the estates being severed. So in other words, we break off part of the property, creates landlocked property. There has to be unity of ownership prior to the severance. So it had to be all one property. The claimed access is a necessity. It's not a mere convenience. The only way to the property is across yours that you purchased. And the necessity existed at the time of the property was severed. So in other words, there's a road that runs through the property. The front half is carved off and sold. I'm going to continue to use that road. It's a necessity. There's no other way into my property other than to go down and cross yours. Then you have a prior use easement. This comes up frequently with utility easements, say water lines across your property that's just been there for years. The Texas Supreme Court says that if you're trying to prove an access easement, you have to use the necessity easement, not prior use. If you're going to be seeking a prior use easement, the party has to prove unity of ownership between two estates. The use of the claimed easement was open and apparent at the time of the severance. The use was continuous, and the use was a necessity to cross the dominant estate. So again, you're seeing a lot of the same requirements of each of these easements, and use is a big one. Did prior use occur, and what type of use was it? The prescriptive easement, a little bit different. This is where you get an easement by adverse possession. The person, say, uses a private road to access their property for over the last 10 years. The courts do tend to be cautious with these prescriptive easements. You have to have very, very strong evidence in order to get them, but you can, in certain circumstances, you can get a prescriptive easement. If you had permission to, say, use a road to cross a property, a prescriptive easement's not going to work for you. The way that you get a prescriptive easement, it has to be open and notorious. In other words, it has to be visible. So in other words, I'm driving down this road that cuts through your property, and I'm doing it during the day, during the night, whenever I'm crossing the property, I'm waving to you. Hi, how are you doing? It has to be continuous and ongoing for 10 years. It has to be exclusive. Use must be distinct, not shared by the public. So not everyone can use this road to cross your property. I'm the only one that's doing it. It has to be adverse. So in other words, it has to occur without the landowner's permission. And again, it has to be for 10 years or more. I've seen ag property. I grew up in West Texas, just northwest of Abilene, and there's a property that I know of. It was severed, it was sold, and the only way to get to a person's house was to drive down this road that cut through the pasture of another one. And so that, after 10 years, yes, would be a prescriptive easement. And even if that property sold, if they could prove that they've used it for the last 10 years, then yes, it would probably hold. Easements by estoppel is another. Essentially, if a person is led to believe an easement exists and acts in reliance on it, that easement does exist. For instance, person seeking an easement by estoppel must prove representation is communicated by word or action, communication was believed, and it was relied upon. An example here, a seller tells a buyer an easement exists across their property. Then buyer relies on that statement whenever they purchase the property, and afterward the seller says, yeah, no dice, I'm not going to let you cross. In this case, an easement by estoppel would be the route to go. Landlocked property, we're going to kind of move a little bit away from easements, but not all the way away. Landlocked property, we mentioned it earlier, it is a thing in Texas. There's kind of a myth that land cannot be landlocked in Texas. It absolutely can. The problem with landlocked property is, number one, you can't get to it unless, I guess, you fly a helicopter into it. Title's not marketable for landlocked property, so that means that no one can get title insurance on it. And if you're going to get a loan to buy the property, well, then there's a problem here if you can't get title insurance. How do you access property if it's landlocked? Well, the first and foremost, the best way to get access is to obtain an express easement. In other words, you get that written easement that says, yes, you can cross to get to your landlocked property. You could prove an easement by necessity and file action in court to get a ruling. You could prove a constructive easement, file action in court, get a ruling. The easement on file would be in the public records. So in other words, I find a constructive easement is on the public records. I find it, yes, I can get it, and then I can file suit and say, yes, there was a prior use easement or something like that that's on the records. You could seek help from the county commissioner's court under the Texas Transportation Code 251.053. You have to prove an affidavit. You must provide an affidavit showing that there's no access, any other access to your landlocked property. You have to identify whose property you need to cross, where the road should go. For instance, the commissioner's court can condemn a county road that allows you access, or they can create a road, but they will not maintain it. So there's different ways to get to landlocked property, but seriously, there's some big issues that are still created. Here's a war story. Two sisters inherited land in West Texas without legal access. In other words, it's landlocked. They attempted to gain access. They asked for an express easement. They asked for an easement in writing. There's two county officials on either side. In other words, two county commissioners. One said, no way, you're not crossing me. The other one said, well, I'll do it for a price. Necessity easement, they did have unity of ownership. They argued that it was a necessity and it was severed back in the 1940s. This is the route the two sisters went. One county official says that at some point the owner crossed another neighbor. So right there, because they had crossed before in another location, the necessity easement got shot down. There's no way to prove necessity of access at the time of severance back in the 1940s because anyone that could testify has passed away. The prior use easement, it's not applicable if you're seeking access for landlocked property. The prescriptive easement, continuous and open and notorious, was a big problem. The easement by estoppel, there's no communication to rely on. They could go to the county commissioner's court to try and get this thing resolved, but remember who the neighbors are. So they ended up having this property, and the only way that they were going to be able to get access to it was to pay the county commissioner for them to allow access. So sometimes that's just what it comes down to. In certain cases like this, there's no way around it. You cannot get to that property. You cannot get an easement in any way to get to that property. Adverse possession. Also, I've seen this come up and asked a lot of questions about adverse possession to obtain title to property. And it may shock you what some of the rules are in the state of Texas. Squatters' rights. We've heard about squatters before. Legally, it's a concept by which one person can gain ownership of the land of another by making unpermitted use of that land, and they have to use it for a certain period of time. It's not easy for an adverse possessor to prove squatters' rights. This is really not easy. This is not a typo. It's very difficult for squatters' rights to stand up in court. The old law school example that typically what you see, someone fences off part of my land deep in the woods, builds a house. They don't have my permission. I don't find out, I don't stop them, and they're there for 50 years. It's still going to be difficult for adverse possession to kick in and for squatters' rights to kick in here. Now, there are instances where we can see adverse possession take place. You just have to have some hurdles to jump over. This is the one that probably shocks most people. There is a 3-year statute for adverse possession in Texas. You can potentially gain ownership of property after only 3 years of occupying it if you have a deed. And that deed does not legally have to be valid. The requirements here: color of title. There's a deed that on its face appears to transfer title, even if it's ultimately defective or invalid. I'm going to show you how in just a second. I'm going to give you an example. But you have to have a deed that looks like it is correct and that it transferred title. You possessed it for 3 years and occupy the property peacefully and adversely for 3 years. In other words, adversely, I'm doing it without your permission, but it was peaceful. Neither one of us disagreed. The legal owner of the property is barred from filing a lawsuit to recover it if I've been on that property for 3 years with a deed peacefully on that property. It's visible. In other words, I possess it. I've been using it openly for 3 years, and it's exclusive. Me and only me. I'm the only one that has been using the property. Here's an example. Trespasser duly purchases a property. In other words, I purchase property right next to one of you. If my deed is incorrect and it shows a portion of your property as mine, then I'm effectively a trespasser on your property. Let's say I purchased 170 acres, but 12 acres of it I thought was mine, and the deed looks like it shows that it's mine, but it's actually not. Well, anytime I'm on that 12 acres, I'm trespassing. So in other words, the deed mistakenly indicated that the purchase included part of my land, part of your land. I occupy that as part of the mistaken land for 3 years under the assumption that I'm the rightful owner. You don't say anything at all. Well, after 3 years, I could bring up a claim for ownership. This and this alone shows how important it is to have a survey, especially on ag property. Y'all have scared me to death throughout the time that I've been doing classes for real estate agents. I will never purchase another piece of property, house, land, you name it, without having a brand new survey. And I would like to pay for it because I want to pick the surveyor. That thing needs to be dead on. I want to make sure, I want the surveyor to ensure that, yes, it is true and correct, because this can happen. If the survey is off a little bit, we've got a lot of surveys in Texas that work off of the big oak tree or maybe a big rock. That's how they used to do surveys. Some of them are still floating around that still use that. As time goes by, if I purchase property and it used the big oak tree or the rock, now we've got a blurred line in terms of our property line. And so I could use that underneath this statute to effectively gain title. We've also got a 5-year statute, a little bit different than the 3. Can gain ownership after 5 years. Color of title is the same. I've got a deed that on its face appears correct, even if it's not. I've peacefully possessed the property for an uninterrupted from the true owner for 5 years. I've paid property taxes. I've paid property taxes for the last 5 years on this land, and I've cultivated it, used it, or enjoyed this property for the last 5 years. In other words, I plowed it. I've paid property taxes. You haven't said anything. I've been outward about it, and I've got a deed or title. Then I can claim title to it after 5 years. 10-year statute. This is the one that's common in Texas that we hear about it. Requirements here, I don't need a title or deed. I can be on the property and I don't have to have a deed for it. I've been on there continuously. It's been open and hostile. I have to be obvious to the landowner that I'm on the property and I'm using it. I don't have that landowner's permission to use it. I don't have a deed. I've been on the property. You've actually seen it. I've actually used it. I use the property for farming or building structures. Simply clearing brush or grazing cattle, cutting weeds, or hunting on it every now and then, that's not sufficient. I've been actively using this property. It's been peaceful. The landowner took no action under a claim of right. In other words, I used it with the intent to claim ownership, not just to use it. Then yes, I could actually claim that property even without a deed. Some of you may ask, well, what about leaser? You know, what about somebody that's leasing my property to say farm it? I've got that as well. I still have family farmland in West Texas. We have a lease agreement with that individual. So they did not use it with the intent to own it. They used it only with the intent to use it. So a signed lease, not a verbal lease, but a signed lease helps sink it in stone that even after 10 years without a deed, you cannot claim ownership of that property. Another reason a signed lease is so very important. 25-year statute, that also exists. It says that you can bring suit, you can claim property. It gives a 25-year time period on this. The conditions are still the same as the others, but the statute here gives a little bit more leeway for the landowner that might have a legal disability. A legal disability would be a condition that prevents that person from exercising their legal right. Maybe they're a minor, or maybe they lack the mental capacity to be able to file a lawsuit or to know that this is incorrect. So there's a little bit longer for an owner that falls into this category before someone can just come in and just claim their property as their own. Mineral rights is another one that I was asked to talk about. Mineral rights, you have ownership of the minerals underground. Typically what we see with mineral rights, and this goes back to your farm and ranch contract, you're going to see oil, gas, uranium, sulfur, coal, lignite, things like that. Not included are normally sand, gravel, limestone, building stones. That's considered part of the surface, not the mineral rights. Counties do have records that trace back who owns what minerals. Landmen are usually used to try and search ownership. I get a lot of questions. I'm up in the Dallas area. I get a lot of questions sometimes from real estate agents that maybe aren't aware. They have a client that wants to buy 20 or 25 acres and they want to buy property that and 100% of the mineral rights. And I say, number one, I don't know why they would do that, why they would want that. And their answer usually is they don't want someone being able to come onto their property and drill at will. Number two, I say it's going to be almost impossible to find property with 100% of the mineral rights, especially in and around your major metropolitan areas, because that property has been divided and split 9 ways to sideways from generation to generation that might have owned it and then sold off in pieces. Typically what you see whenever you sell property, you'll retain part of the mineral rights. We just went through a transaction with, or we're under contract for some of our land in West Texas. In the beginning, I requested to retain 100% of our mineral rights. We negotiated it down, and I'm gonna retain 50% of the mineral rights that I currently own, which I own 50% of all the mineral rights on that property. So at the end of the day, once we close, I'll own 25% of the mineral rights on that property. Very, very difficult to find 100% ownership. It can be done, but it's very, very difficult. Again, most people use a landman to find out what the ownership share is of minerals on a property. Mineral rights can be severed from the surface. So you can sell the surface, similar to what I did in West Texas with some of the family farmland out there, sold the surface outright, but I retained a portion of the minerals. They are transferable. So in other words, if I continue to own 25% of the minerals, I don't sell them for the rest of my life. I have 2 children. Whenever I pass away, it'll go to my 2 children and be split between them. So they'll have 12.5% and 12.5%. I could sell them. I could deed them over. Court order could say that I have to relinquish those mineral rights. I can also lease them out. So I own 12.5 or I own 25% of the mineral rights on the property in West Texas. Whoever buys the surface, if they don't have any of the mineral rights, well, the surface is the one that serves the mineral ownership. So the surface serves the mineral estate. The owner of the minerals, we have the right to go in and explore to extract the minerals from the surface owner. Now, if that happens, in other words, let's say that we have a company that comes along and they want to drill for oil. They're going to contact me as one of the mineral owners. They were asked about a lease for minerals. If we say yes, they will approach the surface owner and negotiate a surface lease to come in, because they're going to have to place the equipment on the surface. They'll negotiate a surface lease with the surface owner for the surface rights, and then they can drill. If the surface owner says no, yeah, they can ultimately go to the point where the court will say yes, they're going to, because the surface serves the mineral estate. Here's something else that I guess is a pet peeve of mine, and I've also seen a lot of problems, particularly with farm and ranch deals. Lenders. It matters which lender you choose. Ever run into this? Here's a scenario that I had about 2 months ago. It was a Friday afternoon, 5 p.m., and my phone rings. I pick it up. It is a seller's agent. They identify that they are closing on Thursday. So it's 5 p.m. on Friday. They're closing the next Thursday morning. It's a 20-acre property, has ag exemption, and it has a house on it. 1 acre for the house, rest of it 19 acres ag exempt. This is the seller's agent that called me. The buyer's agent had contacted the seller's agent earlier that day and was pretty ticked off. They were demanding that the seller sign an addendum stating that the seller would pay the rollback taxes. The buyer's agent, again, was agitated, on the verge of being rude. Seller's agent was saying, why on earth is this happening? What is going on here? Why is this falling apart with 4 days left? Seller's agent questioned the buyer's agent, the buyer's agent thought there would be a rollback. The seller's agent said, why? I even looked it up. Ag exemption was still on the property. Why on earth is buyer's agent thinking there's going to be a rollback? The buyer's agent comment, you removed 6 chickens from the property 3 months ago. You voluntarily gave up your ag exemption. This is common knowledge. Everybody knows it. My comment was, well, that buyer's agent's never been to one of my classes, because you can't get ag exemption with 6 chickens. Seller's agents asking for advice. What do we do? Why is this happening? Again, what I know, you're not going to get ag exemption for 6 chickens. They were getting it for some other reason. They have not voluntarily given it up. Again, I pulled up the property. Appraisal District's website still showed ag use. In other words, it has the ag exemption. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I decide, you know what? I think I know what the reason is. Let's just fish a little. Again, seller's agent's going, what on earth's going on here? Why is a buyer's agent agitated? Is there a solution? I ask more questions. Tell me a little bit more information about the deal. The seller's agent said, well, the buyer's agent forwarded me an email from the lender. I ask, what does that email say? Can you please read the email to me? And I hear Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 wah. And then I hear T30 endorsement. And I said, stop right there. There's your problem. There's your problem, T30 endorsement with this lender. This is why it's falling apart. The appraisal district sends information to title during a deal. Okay, title will order all the paperwork from the appraisal district. If there's an ag exemption on the property, then the paperwork that comes from the appraisal district will state that it may be subject to rollback. This does not mean that there will be rollback taxes. It means, hey, heads up, if you buy this property and you don't continue ag, there's going to be a rollback tax. Hopefully title gets this docs early. You know, they order it early in the process because they've dealt with this problem before. So hopefully, soon as they get the contract, boom, they're getting the information from the appraisal district. I've seen them wait a while. I've seen docs come in 2 weeks before closing or 2 days before closing. This creates a problem. This is where the fun begins. Realize that title companies are a regulated industry. And this is taken directly from their regs. Title cannot insure against rollback taxes unless it has satisfactory evidence in its file that the assessed taxes for the current year are not based on an agricultural or open space valuation, or rollback taxes have been assessed by all the taxing authorities. The rollback taxes are collected at closing by the company, and the company will pay the rollback taxes in ordinary course of business. In other words, what this group of regs says, title companies, you cannot insure against rollback taxes. In other words, you can't close if there's going to be rollback taxes. So how do title companies close on ag property? That's where the T30 endorsement comes in. The T30 endorsement protects the lender. It says title company guarantees there's not going to be any other fees after closing. Well, if I buy ag property and I don't continue to engage in ag use, there's going to be a rollback tax, and that rollback tax is going to come after closing, and that's going to be an additional fee. So there's a huge problem here with this T30 endorsement. It says you're not going to have any fees after closing. Well, a rollback tax would be a fee. So title companies ask, hey, lender, if it's ag exempt, we need you to waive this T30 endorsement. If the title asks them to waive that and the lender doesn't understand ag, they're probably not going to waive it. They're going to say, no way, we're not waiving any of our endorsements at all. Well, then title says we can't close it unless you waive this endorsement, or we're going to make an exception here. And the lender says, no, we're not going to waive it. We don't want that exception. Well, title, we can't close it. And we go around and around and around. What happens on the lender's end? Let's look at it from the lender's standpoint. The lender, they've done some internal checking. They want to close the deal. They don't want to lose it. This may take days because the lender gets the info from their closing department that we're not going to be able to close it as is. They start trying to find a way around it because they don't want to lose the deal. This could take days or even weeks for them trying to solve this issue internally. Underwriting and closing are where the hang up is. So they're trying to work it out internally, and they finally conclude they're not gonna be able to do the deal the way that it sits. So they have to change up the way that this deal sits. They got to do away with that ag exemption wording. Their reasoning here, the borrower, we don't want to waive this protection because the borrower qualified for a certain loan, a certain amount. Rollback taxes, they could alter whether that borrower still qualifies. They don't want a chance that the borrower is going to buy the property and not continue on with the ag exemption. Some may not even understand this, even if they intend to maintain the ag exemption, they still don't understand what it is. They just know that they have to give up some of their protection. They don't want to do it. Solutions some lenders have thrown out that I've heard from you all. Lenders have called the appraisal district demanding it be removed. They've told the appraisal district, we're going to have your job if you don't remove this. Appraisal districts are going, no one wants our job. So no, no, and plus we can't. It's state law. We have to keep this wording on there. Some lenders have required the ag exemption be removed. So like the one that they were suggesting on the example I've given you, have the seller sign an affidavit that says that they will pay it. Then just have the buyer reapply once they get back in, once they buy the property. Well, that causes a big old problem because the buyer then has to show a 5-year history of ag production before they can apply. If we voluntarily give it up, if we force a rollback, the appraisal district's going to require a 5-year history of production. So that's a problem. And plus, you're putting your own buyer at risk of having to pay higher property taxes than they should. I've seen lenders withdraw from the deal 2 weeks before closing or 2 days. If it's 2 days before closing, you're not going to be able to find another lender to meet that closing date. If it's 2 weeks, maybe, if all the stars line up. But 2 days, you're out of luck. The seller's agent that called me, they had 4 days. It was Friday afternoon at 5. They had 4 days. I was like, I think you're going to have to push closing. Why is the buyer's agent so mad? Well, I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. Here we have the buyer's agent that's hanging on to the deal, the merry-go-round. We've got the lender over here that's trying to hang on to the deal, and the buyer's agent's trying to hang on to the lender because the buyer's agent's the one that recommended the lender to the buyer. So we've got everyone on the buy side trying to save face or save the deal, and the seller's just going, why on earth is this happening? What on earth is happening? How could this have been prevented? Be careful. Be very, very careful, especially if you're dealing with rural land deals, you're doing anything with the ag exemption. Buyer's agent, ask the buyer to talk to underwriting and closing within their lender. Not just the first person that answers the phone. Their job is to say, yes, we can. Get to underwriting and closing and make certain you're going to be able to close this deal. It has ag use. Seller's agent, vet that buyer's financing right down to underwriting and closing, because that's where the hangup occurs. Also, you can talk to your title company and say, let's get the ball rolling early with the appraisal district docs and get those over to the lender, because we need to find out and make sure that they're going to close it. Now, I've got a different way. Start with a lender that understands ag loans. That's probably your best bet. You know, they understand ag lenders. They understand we're going to have to waive that T30 endorsement. That's fine. There's not a problem at all. If there's a rollback tax, they may require that you refi the loan. But ag lenders understand it. But still, there's a problem in a deal. How do we get an early warning sign? How do we find out? Are we going to have problems with this lender, especially if you're the seller's agent? If you're the seller's agent, how do you guarantee? Because that's out of your control. Is there a way that the seller's agent could find out early if the right lender has been chosen by the buyer? My recommendation here, use the farm and ranch contract. If the seller's agent indicates they will only accept farm and ranch contract, the lenders not willing to handle ag exemptions will ask you, hey, can you switch this over to the 1-4 family residential? Can you switch that over? I've seen this time and time again where an offer was written on the farm and ranch and then the lender asked to move it over to a residential contract. That should be a blaring, oh my gosh, there can be a problem here. This may not be the right lender. You may get an early warning sign. At least what you need to do is start calling and making sure, are you going to close this deal? So how big a property do you use the farm and ranch contract with? I do a lot of classes with the former chair of TREC, and she and I, after the classes, you know, we tend to go out and maybe have dinner, maybe an adult beverage. There was one time that we were doing that after a day long of classes, and I asked her, I said, what is your criteria since you're a broker of like 40 years or 30 years and you're former chair of TREC? What's your criteria for using the farm and ranch contract? She started going down the road of, well, if the property's value is greater than, say, the value of the structure on the property, I'd use the farm and ranch contract. And I guess that we had been there long enough, or I knew her well enough. I said, well, I disagree. And she laughed and she said, okay, why do you disagree? And I said, in my opinion, if it has the ag exemption, regardless of size, I want to use the farm and ranch contract for this reason. Realize across the state of Texas, you can get an ag exemption on as little as 5 acres. 6 acres if you have a house with 5 additional acres for bees. So to me, I could have a $15 million house sitting on 6 acres of land in far west Texas where the price of land might be, I don't know, $1,500 to $3,000 an acre. Well, the land does not outweigh the value of the home, but I still want that farm and ranch contract because it's going to give me an early indication that maybe the buyer has the wrong lender. Farm and ranch contract, as you know, paragraph 13 talks about prorations and rollback taxes. This paragraph in the TREC farm and ranch contract says the person that changes the use is the one that'll pay the rollback taxes. Here's another little indication. Here's another little problem I've seen just in the last couple of weeks that popped up. Had an individual in Northeast Texas, had 170 acres, ag exempt, grazing cattle on it. They carved off 3 acres, sold it to what would become a neighbor to build a house on. That property, there was a rollback tax. They changed use whenever they sold it. And here's the thing, the rollback tax, the rollback bill, it went to the previous owner that carved it off, the 170 acres. I was in the appraisal district whenever that individual came in and they're screaming, I didn't change use. I didn't change use. It was ag up until the time that I sold it. The appraisal district pointed out that they used the farm and ranch contract, and because they carved off 3 acres, 3 acres will not qualify. It's too small. So as soon as you carved it off and you sold it using the farm and ranch contract, you're the one that changed use. Seller, you changed use, you'll pay the rollback. So there's another little side note there. I'd be happy to answer any type of questions that y'all may have. My contact info's down here. Got my email. That phone number is to my office. Typically, I'm not in my office. I'm usually out. I'm out right now sitting in a conference room after I finished a meeting this morning and about to go to another. But I'd be happy to answer any type of questions or any comments y'all have.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. And I'm Lisa. I'm on Jessica's computer, so it's All my personalities have a place today. I know you want me back at like 10:45 last night to confirm today, so I really appreciate that and appreciate you squeezing us into your busy schedule. Does anybody here in person have any questions y'all want to ask Dr. Bennett while we have his attention?
Great information. Really good information.
Yeah, some great information. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Bennett's actually going to be back with us for our August and October meetings, I think. I have to double check on that. But
Yeah, double check those dates because I got them all over the place. But
yes.
Sounds great.
Anybody have questions? Leanne Bailey?
I'm trying real hard.
Somebody write it down. Leanne doesn't have any questions. Anybody joining us?
If you don't have any questions right now or it comes up, my job is to provide outreach education and to assist. And let me tell you, what I love most about working with y'all is the deal. I love the deal. I love whenever there's something that comes up and how do we get past this? How do we do this? And you know, if I can add to that, if I can help y'all, that is my absolute favorite part of working with y'all is the deal itself.
Awesome. And if y'all don't follow Texas Ag Law blog, Tiffany does an amazing job putting that out. I shared her article going back to the easement conversation earlier about the reiteration of landlocked properties and lack of an easement being provided. That I shared it on our group page, I think last week. So Leanne Bailey does have a question.
Hi. So on the one, say you break off, let's just say you do 6 or so the 5 and B's and the 1, are you paying rollbacks on the 1 for the house?
Okay, so if I'm going to break it off, I am going to break off at least 5 acres out of my total. If I'm going to sell it and you're going to be building a home, I want to carve off at least 5 acres, or I want the rollback language to change to you as the buyer, you're going to pay the rollbacks. If you break off 5 can still qualify. Okay. So 5 can still qualify. So I have not changed use by selling it. You go in, you've got 5 acres ag exempt, but you want to build a house on it. You build a house declared as your homestead. You do not pay rollback taxes as long as it's your homestead. That's one way that I can get. I don't change use as the seller, and you change use to your homestead. But if you're building a homestead, it is not taxable in terms of rollback taxes because it's your homestead.
Okay. Makes sense. I have one more question.
Sure.
Is anything coming out about the screwworm and or anthrax for us to be paying attention to
On the contract side.
on the contract side?
Oh, on the contract side, not that I know of. No, I have not seen anything at all as far as screwworm and anything that we need to be aware of from the contract side. If you're looking for stuff on screwworm itself, yeah, and AgriLife Extension, we've got a ton of paperwork coming out. But you know what? I'm an economist, so that biology stuff I didn't do well in school.
I was going to say, do you have any recommendations for us? But you're taking the economist route, so
I'm pleading the ignorance of just understanding the dollar signs.
that's okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But AgriLife does have a lot out
Yeah,
there.
and we've been sharing out the webinars that they're putting on. There's a big one that's going to be in Fredericksburg, Kerrville, kind of out and about, and a lot of offices are doing a live stream to that same deal. That's something good to share out for your landowners. Going back to the adverse possession, let's say we do have a client that has that, right? Well, so-and-so died. We've got people in nursing homes, all the things. Well, cousin Tommy's been paying the property taxes for 10 years and they've never cleared up the deed. Is that just you go to a real estate attorney? Like, where's the process to claim adverse possession?
Right. You're going to have to file the deed in the county. County's going to probably get in touch with the owner of record or try and get in touch with the owner of record. It's not an easy hurdle. Let's face it. They're going to try and get in touch with the previous owner for adverse possession. But if you've been 10 years, you've been using it, you've been using it with the intent to own it, you've been paying the property taxes, you've got a pretty good claim. So cousin Tony's been farming the land and paying the property taxes all this time out of his own account. What was the discussion within the family? Could one of the family members come up and say, no, grandma and granddad said you could use it and you could pay the property taxes out of it. That was going to be your lease agreement. And it was an oral lease. That's all it'll take for there to be a hang up in court. Courts don't want to just take land from landowners.
Interesting. Anybody else have anything? Everyone's quiet. I feel like they're caffeinated.
I know we need coffee.
Or bored to death. They're bored to death.
No. It's great info. We really appreciate it. And we love the real world scenarios because you can, like the Charlie Brown teacher scenario, we can all sit in those workshops and you feel like you're listening to Charlie Brown's teacher and the takeaway is never very high. So we really appreciate you using actual cases and contracts that you worked with. And we look forward to your next presentation. And then Dr. Bennett also is out and about at a lot of events and conferences. So definitely they do a really great landowner series workshop. I went to in Decatur with Jason Jarvis and Wrights and Ashley a couple years ago. That was really good. And we did one up in, I can't even think of the name of the county near Kaufman, but I don't remember. Maybe it was Kaufman County. That might make sense.
Right. Any of y'all going to be down in the San Antonio, Corpus, down to Harlingen? Because we're doing a fall tour where it's going to be a whole week, Castroville and all that area. It's going to be 3 or 4 day-long events.
That's awesome. You're gonna have a tour. All your roadies will be attending. That'd be perfect.
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I was asked, do you want to go? And I said, well, let me see. South Texas, you might be able to go dove hunting down in South Texas in September. Yeah, I could probably go. Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bennett. We hope the rest of your day goes well. Appreciate you being a resource for our team.
Absolutely. If you ever have any questions, again, I will shoot over a copy of all this. Send me the names of everybody with their license numbers. I'll make sure that you get credit, and
Awesome.
I will shoot you a copy of these handouts.
All right. Thank y'all so much. For those of y'all joining online, I'm going to keep this window open, Dr. Bennett. We appreciate it. We're going to continue on with a little other meeting. We're going to break for lunch here if you're in person, but I'm going to leave this open. So it's going to be the same meeting link to join. You can just mute and turn your camera off. Also, Jimmy is with us from Capital Title. I know when Texas Farm Credit was here 2 months ago, Texas Farm Credit uses Capital a lot because they do work with ag properties and a lot of land properties. Jimmy, you might have tuned this out, but if you're still listening, is there anything you wanted to add to any of that we just went over?
No, thank you so much. No, it's all great information. I think the real life scenarios are key. And anytime you get a contract, you just want to try to get ahead of it as much as possible and explore. And, we always offer with clients, before you take that listing, you feel like something's going on, you're not sure about all the details, call us. We'll dig into that piece of land and try and run down some scenarios for you so that when you do take that listing, you've asked all the right questions. So we're happy to help support early in that process. So
awesome. And I shared in our Facebook group the other day too about a few of us were at some of Kristen's listings on Sunday, and she had some really nice listing binders that Capital Title put together for her. It pulled all the neighborhood restrictions, things to do in the area, like school data, all kinds of cool stuff, open house kits. So make sure if you're going to be aligning with Capital Title that you reach out and let them know that you have a current listing, that you need some support, especially those luxury listings. It looks really nice when you walk in and have a full binder with the whole property and tabs and all kinds of inserts and things too. That's a resource. The open houses were great too, because we did have quite a few couples that came through, and it just makes a great first impression. So Jimmy, thank you for being a strong industry partner for us. We appreciate your time.
Yeah,
our team, awesome. And then our team here is going to break for lunch, and then we'll rejoin this call at 1 to finish off with the meeting. I like timely. I like. We don't need a dilly dally. You know?
If you don't let me in straight up, I want to start, I stress out that I'm on the wrong link.
Well, thank y'all for joining us back again at 1 o'clock. We hope you can come to Bernie. We hope you can come to Bernie and have pizza with us 1 month.
Get her phone number.
Game on. Sit on the clock.
So this meeting, this second part isn't going to be as long or drawn out. Dr. Bennett was our big focus of the day, but wanted to talk to you guys about the 30-day challenge. But first, I have a few announcements, and I had to make notes because that's my brain. First, want to welcome back Shayla from maternity leave officially. She came back after our May meeting, so I'm not sure if but thank you, Shayla, for coming back to work. We're glad you're back. And little Sully is the cutest little guy you've ever seen. So if you're up in the office when she's here, hopefully we'll all get to meet him soon. Also, today for furthest traveled, I want to give a shout out to Todd, Amy, and Leanne for driving in from West Texas to join us today. I think y'all burned a lot of miles and yesterday, today, all the things. We're glad you're here. And then while we're on Amy's pathway, I think to date, as far as getting her license, getting a listing, and going live within like 24 hours of joining the brokerage is pretty impressive. And then she already has her second listing under contract. So congrats, Amy. Yeah, boom. So you can just fill out this whole 30-day challenge right now. And then happy birthday this week to Jarrett and Colton. I think Colton's on the call. I don't know if I saw Jarrett, but hope y'all had a great day. Colton, any words of wisdom for your birthday?
How old is he? Like 28?
Don't get too old. Don't have kids this late. That's what I'll say.
How old
Really
are you?
that old. 33. But still, it's wearing me down.
You don't have a clue yet, but one day you will. Also, I know Jimmy was on the call this morning, and my friend Mirta, that's a lender, I talked to both of them yesterday just about what they're seeing in the market, because y'all are all independent agents and self-employed, and it's hard to not feel like the sky isn't falling a little bit when you're not seeing the results and numbers that you want. But I just did a check-in with them, and Mirta said while she's still getting contracts in, that her average year-over-year loan amount is down over $50,000. And so what she's seeing is more investors. She has a lot of Spanish speakers, which is normal for her because she is bilingual, but she said the rate is way higher. There's people bringing more cash to the table. And so that sort of gets me to thinking, okay, who is buying and how do we get in front of those people? And are we marketing in ways that we're showing people that we do work with investors, we do help with people that maybe might have outside the box financing, and make sure that you have a resource within your wheelhouse to transfer those deals to. She said she was working on a deal yesterday that she would have never done a couple of years ago. It was a $150,000 loan, and the guy put $30,000 down, but he's buying it under market value, going to invest some money into it and flip it. So are we marketing and creating content around those types of scenarios? Because we need to put marketing out that's going to attract deals. Maybe it's not our ideal deal, but it's deals nonetheless. And those just look a little bit different than they have. A lot of you guys, I know Christopher is always watching Fox News and all the news channels, but y'all probably heard this week there's a lot of tariffs that just came out. My husband's in the steel business, and they're expecting steel prices to go up 25%. The tariffs are going to be 25%, which won't be the end product 25%. But to me, what that looks like is right now, a lot of our competition in non-Ozona markets is new construction, right? We have the higher end builders, Ashton Woods, Perry Homes, Chestnut, people like that, that have the title company and the lender all in-house. So they've been able to offer 4.5% or $10,000 to closing, or, you know, build to your liking, no repairs with warranty. And so I'm not an economist. We probably should have asked Dr. Bennett this, but as building costs go up again, and of course, we don't know how long that's going to last, I think that could bring a little bit of life back to the residential resale market, because to build new is going to cost you more than buying what's already built on the ground. And again, so my marketing head says, how do we market to those people to show them they can get instant equity in a residential home? And also, if you decide to sell in 3 years, you haven't just bought a house where you're competing against the builder who will still be offering those same rates and discounts and incentives to buy. So just some sort of things to think about. Y'all should have all seen the 30-day challenge little grid, and I know y'all are really excited about it. You probably can't sleep at night because you're so excited about it. But it's something to just stay consistent and dialed in on your business. And also, if you feel like you're having a non-productive week, I like lists because at least you can show, maybe I'm not seeing the results that I want, but I can see that I'm making the effort, and that can be helpful. And so on the new build side, go visit your builders, talk to your local new build areas and see what are they seeing? What does their traffic look like? Where are buyers coming from? You can pick their brains, and that can help you with your own marketing. So if they're like, yeah, we're having a lot of people right now from Chicago or LA or wherever, then we can set up marketing around those trends that they're seeing. Same with having those conversations with your lenders and title people. That's a great reason to check your box for your have a one-on-one appointment. It doesn't necessarily have to be a potential buyer or seller. You just need to get a pulse and a read on what's going on in the market. Chris, is that something that y'all been doing with your team, kind of just checking in with your industry partners to see what they're seeing? What are you kind of hearing in the market for, like, market update stuff?
Yeah, no, that's all good thought. Yes, we definitely are. So we talk to lenders and Jimmy and title people, different title people, all the time, and just in random conversation. Leanne and I were just talking about a group that she put together for a happy hour with just a real diverse group of people in different sectors of the industry. And so I think that's super important, is to always talk to people. We had a barn builder come over yesterday and look at a little project, and he was talking about cost of steel. Same idea. Well, that's affecting a lot of people, right? And the fact that Mueller's prices have gone up 25% since January 1. So those are things that you want to know, right? When you're representing a landowner or somebody, you can offer that just more value add to any conversation you're having.
Yeah. I know on Richmond's pro forma that he's put together too, right? If you're going to go list a property that has an established barn on it, that might even become more of an asset, because now to build that same thing new with the prices as they are could make that even a more valuable asset, so to speak, and provide value through a listing. I know Todd, when we were out in Alpine with April, Richmond, Tracy, who else is not there? Oh, Mark. We went to a Capital Farm Credit happy hour, and I was really surprised that so many agents from across West Texas came out. There was agents from San Angelo. Todd, where are those agents from? At the Alpine Mixer Capital Farm Credit. Yeah, just, I know one of them was asking for Leanne Bailey. Where's she at? Chip and Chili Cole. But just having those check-ins with other agents and brokers to see what their pulse is, right? Like Todd right now has quite a few land listings in West Texas, but we're not seeing the buyers that we did maybe 6 months ago. And talking to those other agents and just kind of picking their brain, a lot of times they'll tell you more than you even asked about. And then you take that back and make notes about what that can mean, or how you can find those pockets where they've been seeing success. So does anybody else talk to agents or industry partners that wants to share anything they've been seeing in the market? Ritter and I met yesterday, and he was talking about some coastal lots, and people that have money still have money. They're just being very cautious and wise where they spend money. And it sounds like coastal properties are still moving despite what land is doing in other areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what people, are trying to, their vision that they're trying to create.
Yeah.
Down there, they're doing a lot more like bay home development stuff. So on the luxury side, so I think there's some opportunity.
Where on the coast? Where are you talking about?
The specific developments in Port Lavaca, Driftwood Shores at Wolf Point, and the developer just came in and he's selling 1 to 3 acre lots, but he's trying to target like the luxury market.
Yeah.
To build homes in there. He's making a lot of cool amenities. So
very cool.
Thinking outside the box.
And the guys you were talking about, the land sales, where are they marketing? Like, how are they hitting or attracting those buyers?
My conversation, I mean, it's still a lot of your feeder cities, like Houston, Dallas, and all that stuff. Still quite a bit of people from California are coming over here wanting that, 10-acre property outside of town, retirement and second homes.
Very cool.
Bluffs with Tisdale. He said that he and Wendy have been going to 4 day and that they've sold several things. Just connections down there and they're still moving. Houses, condos. He said it's pretty good.
I think with that big port coming into Corpus, it used to be the largest by volume brought through the Corpus port, but now it's going to be volume and quantity of ships. They've been working on that. And I would think that would be a smart area to market down towards, because increasing the flow through the port, you're going to have secondary companies, logistic companies, and things like that build warehouse space and all that. So if you have connections down there, it might be worth making some phone calls just to see if you can't get in on some land deals and things down there. Maybe even Beeville will start booming. The Bee Family Fun Center.
Oh, yeah.
Colton, what are you seeing out in Abilene? I know when I was out there the other day, you talked about the big data center they're building and the base being expanded. I saw Dice had a big drill I shared to your page. It sounds like they're getting ready for something out there. Have you had any other upticks or interesting conversations?
Well, kind of from different angles. The data center thing, they're still trucking along, but I think as far as buying up all the land, they've kind of put a pause on that. I think they've got the land that they need for right now until they decide to expand some more, which it drove home values down out there. So they're having a really hard time selling houses out there. I was talking to Ross as far as farm and ranch goes, and they were talking at Ag Trust, where in the first quarter they were just writing notes like crazy, and then they had a meeting at the start of Q2, and basically all their bosses were saying, like, take anything you can get, because it's definitely like somebody put the brakes on it. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like we've talked about, the tariffs and going back and forth and the rates being a little unstable. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing out here. I do, like you were saying, like Mirta writing those loans for, buying a house for 150,000 and having equity in that house and flipping it and whatever. I have an LLC that I've done some deals with in the past, and they buy up a bunch of them at once, but they're so busy remodeling them, they're not buying more right now. So it's kind of a lull in that department. But I've got another, like, just recreational hill country retreat 14-acre thing listing coming soon. So I have people wanting to list their recreational stuff because I think they want to kind of dump the responsibility, but not necessarily finding buyers in this area for them. It's been fairly difficult.
Where's that property going to be located?
That one's out there. It's right on the border of Eastland and Erath County. It's probably 30 minutes from Stephenville. It's near closest to Desdemona.
Very cool. Very cool. Have you heard any more on the DICE expansion for their bomber unit that they're building? And if people are starting to get transferred in?
That, like I said, they were supposed to, I guess whoever was in charge of that squadron was supposed to talk to our realtor association here, and then something happened and they kind of put the brakes on that. But like from the first responder side that I've seen in the last 2 years, and I think it has to do with, the Russia-Ukraine deal, and what's going on in Israel. Like, we're training a ton on radiological, like war, like we're really dumping a bunch of money into hazmat and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if the federal government or the Department of Defense just thought we're super underprepared and we need to be a lot more prepared. But like over the last 2 years, we've probably, tripled our training on stuff like that. So I think DICE is kind of following suit, and we are as well, which we work in conjunction with their hazmat team and their bomb squad and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's interesting.
It's very interesting.
My
Yeah, not to
prepper dad love that
Yes.
info.
not to sound too ominous, but it has definitely been an increase and stuff like that.
Yeah, just even when we were out in Alpine and the National Guard presence out there when you can't get a hotel on the border right now, which is great for April's business. I know she's actually working some deals right now and couldn't join the call, but her short-term rentals are up in occupancy because 70% of the hotels in Alpine are being occupied by the National Army Guard.
Oh, wow.
So same with Laredo and most border towns, they're rounding up in the larger towns. Laredo, you can't get a hotel room out right now. Also, I have talked to landowners along the border that y'all know me. I talk to people wherever I'm at and met some people at the Aggie baseball game about a month ago. And they live between Eagle Pass and Del Rio. And they said, you know, for the last 4 years, it's been really, really rough, but they've already seen a major change. And so I know a lot of landowners that live in that part of Texas haven't necessarily wanted to sell because they knew they couldn't really get any money for it because who wants that kind of traffic on your property? So if you do have South Texas connections that maybe thought about selling, I would think it might be a good time to reach back out and say, hey, now that things appear to be a little safer, you have less traffic coming through, maybe it's time to reevaluate if you're ready to sell. It sounds like it's a safer place to be. Nothing like having a hunting property and your hunter that is paying to be there looks up and is surrounded by 30 visitors that aren't deer. So just something to think about if you'll have connections down there, start really hitting South Texas again. And same with out in Alpine, there's talks that they're going to build a new base out there where Marfa had a base years ago. That's where all the guys in Alpine actually go to train as they go out to Marfa. So it's just kind of interesting keeping tabs on what's going on in the world and how that affects our real estate from tariffs to military and all the changes that we've seen since January. Does anybody have anything else on that particular topic you want to add? I know, really exciting. I have some other notes. Hang on. Has anybody started doing the 30-day challenge? I know I talked to Tiffany. Do y'all see Tiffany? I don't know if Tiffany's on the call, but Tiffany is trying to get outside of her own comfort zone and make phone calls and do cold calls. She is very veteran focused. Her husband, Bernie, is a wounded warrior. He's a Marine, and we pulled data through Fetch on veterans. And so if that's something that's important to you, we can do that through Fetch by seeing what type of loan they have, because if they have a VA loan, someone in their household is either active duty or a veteran. And so she's working on a couple of events to do photography sessions with older veterans, like legacy photos. And so she's going to be setting up a photo session at a model home in Civil Oaks Shirts area, and then also doing one hopefully here at the office in a couple months with a photographer that specializes in that. There's a need for the former military to have a nice picture of themselves so that when they do pass one day, the family does have something nice to keep for their family. So she's been making cold calls. Let me go back to that. So she's going through her list, doing texts and emails and phone calls and logging everything through Bold Trail. I know some of you guys are hesitant to do that, but what's the worst that can happen? You know, you get no's or hung up on. Well, that's every day. So just put yourself out there, and if you make it within your niche and what you want to work on, and maybe you're going to invite somebody to an educational webinar or invite them to an open house, right? You can call with a purpose where it makes it a little easier to do. And our competition is calling. So if we're wanting to see the results, we have to do the things that we find a little uncomfortable sometimes.
What do we win? Besides a little.
You win closings.
Besides that, I need a
She needs a prize.
A flower bouquet.
Gold star.
Jessica's gonna make you a gold star.
Yeah. Please don't let these suckers down there at the end.
I mean, I love a healthy competition, for sure. Is anybody seeing success with any of the marketing that you're currently doing? Kyle, where are you seeing success with some? I know we were talking about your pipeline yesterday and how we think we have a plan and a consistency, and then things come out of left field.
I'm so scattered right now. It's kind of just like a little bit of everything we've been working. You know, some people looking for a little bit of land outside of town, and then, you know, this coast deal just popped up. And then buddy at a college called me about a listing in San Antonio. So it's just
You think all those
These are
people
all
are like
like-
consistently seeing you on social media though? Like you're just staying in front of them?
Yeah,
that
like
way?
it's these are more like long-term relationship
Yeah.
built, deals that are flowing right now.
Sphere.
Yeah, Sphere.
Good place to be.
Sphere.
Like I know a guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I'm rocking with right now.
Yeah.
There you go.
I listen to a lot of books because I'm on the road a lot and it helps me just stay focused. And the one I'm listening to right now talked a lot about when you're struggling in your business, try to do something kind for people, something that matters to people. And what it'll do is like start making you enjoy your business again. It's been a little while since I've had a closing. So I will tell you, sometimes I'm like I don't love my job right now sometimes, but I love helping people. So instead of thinking about the business part of it, I'm starting to try to think, what can I do to keep helping people? Because that's my passion. So I don't know, that is kind of refueled me for a little bit this week and thought, okay, so I'm going to start making my list on how I can help people. And I've been helping my mom a lot. So it's like, take my mom, and Todd and I were there yesterday with the lady. I did cry. I got teared up. She was telling me she lost her husband and she was talking about cleaning. Shut up, dude. Hey, get a word what you got. But anyway, the lady got upset because she was taking out the clothes from her husband who has passed away, and she started taking out, she got overwhelmed, and so the clothes are just sitting there, so we couldn't go back in the house, or couldn't even go in the house because she was so embarrassed. But it struck me because I know my mom's going through that or has gone through it. My dad's been passed away for almost 12 years now. So all of that together brought me back to, why do I do this? Is because I care about people and I want to help people. And with that, my business will continue to grow. So
I like it.
turn that camera back.
I think you did a great job. Definitely. And when you're to me, marketing, it gets a bad taste in people's mouth. Think about, oh, look, McKinsey, you gotta make phone calls. Well, if I was McKinsey, I would be stressed out to the max because I don't want rejection, right? None of us like to call somebody. And we also don't want to be that guy that calls, it annoys us. And so when we lead with value, when we lead with service, when we lead with a purpose, it makes it so much easier because then you're just checking in on people. You're just checking on people that love you and you love them. And like my buddy from Japan that came to town because his mom died, right? Well, I bought a Mustang because he came to Japan and needed to sell this car. Ronda the Honda is still first place though, so don't worry. But we're just helping him, right? We're helping him set up contractors. We're helping him get the house cleaned out.
Well, and the lady talked about yesterday about not having someone to call when she needed something. And so like that struck with me too, because a lot of us and a lot of the people that we work with, they're not all older. They just sometimes need help. And if you call somebody, you might be the person they need help from, or someone that can help them. You can just be a catalyst. So that struck me too yesterday when we were meeting with.
Yeah.
What did I tell her?
You can call me
And she said, I
anytime.
know I can.
You might not answer the phone call.
You started here. Now then I crossed my legs like this.
You should
It's
call
the
when she
inside
had
joke. We had
the tire problem a month ago.
Oh,
We
yeah.
got her on our test.
And you're taking her trailer to dump her stuff
Yeah, she
with.
did a dump trailer.
Victor.
Victor didn't know yet. He said, "Oh, good too."
You wouldn't believe it.
Well, I know for myself, my parents are baby boomers. They were both born in 49. And all of my friends that I've grown up with, if we haven't lost our parents yet, our parents are aging. And we're all in similar boats. Like my buddy from Japan that I haven't seen in a number of years, he's been overseas. So he didn't even know to like call his dad's insurance for the roof. He just called a roofer to fix it. And he goes, yeah, I'll just submit pictures. I'm like, you're not in Japan. It doesn't work that way. And to be that person's connector and conduit to help them through solutions and problems is really helpful. And then put yourself in their shoes. I know like my parents, I feel like are kind of organized and together, but all my dad's told me about when he passes is here's a combo to my safe, go open it. That doesn't really help me now. So I think creating dialogue or like a safe space to tell similar stories, not necessarily about your parents, but about like, have aging parents need help with real estate that goes along with that, right? Having conversations about what to do and my friend from Japan, his dad's in a nursing home. Well, he wants to sell his dad's house. His dad's not going to get out of the nursing home. I said, you can't, because Medicaid will take it, because he's on Medicaid. And just, I know, Leanne, with your mom and all that stuff, like you find out all these things really when it's too late. So we're going to get back to the educational webinars that we did last year and get some speakers together. We met with a guy last week that is a like certified tax preparer, planner, financial advisor, help small businesses strategize on where to invest money. He's going to do a talk for us on y'all's real estate businesses. And you just got a great closing. What do you do with your money? How much do you hold back? Where do you invest back in your business? That kind of thing. So the more resources we can provide other people, the more it's going to help, help build our business too. Coach and Marty, what are y'all seeing up in the Marble Falls area? You're on mute just in case. Maybe they tune me out. It could be. What are you seeing in the Marble Falls Lake area? You're also seeing some movement, or is it slowed down a bit?
There is some good product, even some higher priced product has gone under contract and sold in the last few weeks. There was 2 sizable homes in the Horseshoe Bay market on the water that sold and set price per square foot records. 2 of them sold in the same week. And that was at $12.80 a square foot.
Had they
So,
been on
I
the
don't
market for a long time?
No, not real long. So the good stuff that's in the right spot and is priced decent, to good, is still selling. There's still some cash buyers out there that, have the means to do that. Stuff that's overpriced is sitting very still, and there's a whole lot on the market out there at the lake.
Yeah.
What about new construction up there?
There's a lot of new construction too in different areas, right? Like Kingsland has more than Horseshoe Bay or Grand Shoals, same kind of deal. But yeah, there's quite a bit out there.
Like developers coming in, because I toured one development the other day that's.
Do you go to Grace or where'd you go? And
It's
Kingsland?
Woods at, it was Marble Falls, Woods at Flat Rock Creek,
okay, yeah,
National Land Partners. They did, I guess, Flat Rock Creek, a while back,
right.
but that'd be something to explore.
Marble
New
Falls, I mean, just
construction.
and even as not a lake community, Marble Falls is very much on the radar for ton of growth in the near future. They've got a lot of activity happening over there.
I see a supply and demand for waterfront too, because like my neck of the woods, we have no water in the
Right.
rivers and lakes.
Right.
Dunlap's repaired, Placid's not, Meadow Lake's not.
Right.
Canyon Lake clearly has some issues. So to me, it pushes those same buyers up into those markets, and
On some
maybe
little lakes,
you're
yeah.
going to have a little bit more of a buyer pool than if the lakes where we were actually lakes. The landowners actually pay to have sheep and goats roam the dead lakes to keep the foliage down. Was it Buchanan? I think that was so dry for a long time. They didn't do that. Well, now there's all these like woody things. You can't really navigate the lake too much, but
Well, in some of those older neighborhoods, specifically around like LBJ, like Sunrise Beach, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of potential flips in there for investors.
There
One
are,
of my friends actually just did one.
yeah. Did it work out well for him?
Well, no, they didn't flip it, but they bought an older home, they renovated
Just
it,
renovated it.
and now they're.
Flip and
lake
hold.
house,
There you
but,
go. Yeah.
I'm sure there's an opportunity.
There is, yeah. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of retired people there too. I think more so like in the Horseshoe Bay market than, Sunrise Beach and Central. So there's opportunities for some fix and flips, some older retired people didn't have the cash to go in and make the updates or even, handle the maintenance that was required. So you can buy them right, which is always the key.
Yeah, you
Right.
drive through Jonestown, Lake Travis, and look at all that.
Oh, yeah,
It's pathetic.
exactly.
The docks are 200 a month.
It's so sad.
Mhm.
Yeah. Opportunities are there. You just, man, you got to be digging and they have to buy them right. That's where it starts. So it's just hard. But
one
So
thing.
sorry,
Oh, there you go, Coach.
hey, coach.
yeah, I was literally sending out information about the 1100 listing whenever you called my name, so I wasn't ready to respond. But yeah, I concur with what's been being said. I think that is the most important thing, of course, is just pricing. That right now, that price just has to be something that the buyers will tolerate versus what it maybe was, 2 years ago. And so it's been slow on my properties for sure. But and then I've got the one there at on Kingsland Cove, it's just that bridge. It's a 4 foot, 4.5, 6, 5 foot clearance, to get a boat under. And so consequently, it's great access to the lake. It's great price point, I think. And yet people just get scared away by that.
I guess you're going to market to a kayaker. Somebody that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a wakeboard boat next door. I mean, it's obviously it'll go through. It's just you got to be willing to take that on.
A bass boat will get under it.
There you
Yeah,
go, Kent.
that's right. Kent's familiar with it.
Yeah. I've fished that cove many, many a times.
Kent, how did I know you did 2 open houses last week, one at Legends Parkway and the one y'all are talking about now. What kind of buyers did you have coming through? I know you had some traction at both.
It was obvious the 2 houses were quite different. It seemed the ones that were at Krista's, they were the couples that came in there. They seemed really, really almost ready to buy or looking seriously. There were your lookies, a little bit more. Actually, at Krista's, we had 7 couples, and there were 3 that would not surprise me a bit if they contact Krista on that. And a couple will just be telling everybody that they went to see a house that nice. And a little bit different with Kyle's. It was there were 2 realtors that have wanted to go in there and see it. The way it was priced, they wanted an opportunity to share it more. So that's kind of the difference there were there.
Awesome. Well, great work. I know you're probably going to work on one for Bridgepoint Father's Day weekend, and
Yes,
knowing your market. Like, what was it? Easter weekend we did the first Legends. I can't remember.
Mhm.
And I was like, nobody's going to come, but in that area, that's when you have the most traffic because it's a tourist town. So you got to kind of figure out when you're going to get traction based on the people that are coming through. And Leanne and I have talked about marketing Fredericksburg for residents, right? Like, I know Fredericksburg as a tourist town. I don't really know Fredericksburg to live there. And so how do you convert a tourist to a buyer through your marketing? And so that's why lately, if I have access to your Facebook pages, I've been posting like random things. So we did a pet friendly places in Fredericksburg and stuff in Canadian up in the Panhandle. Karen up there is, her problem is that people are leaving the town and they're moving away. And so she needs to draw people in. So she's working with her Economic Development Corporation in Canadian to attract more families to want to live there. And so each of us have our own kind of niche or like problem in our market area, and how do we overcome that? And you never know how that's going to work out, but try to figure out, why do people move there? How can we talk about things that, like, I was born in Seguin, I still live in Guadalupe County. What I think is a big deal isn't really like, or what I don't think is a big deal, people think it's a big deal, right? Like stuff that's been there my whole life, you don't really pay attention to. Like, how many of us live near San Antonio? We haven't been to Alamo since 3rd grade field trip. It's not like something that we're going to go do when we're in San Antonio. But we need to figure out, how do we convert the tourists? I mean, even Shannon, the College Station market, how does somebody buy in a College Station area? How do you get that former alumni to come back and buy a retirement home in College Station? And so set up your marketing in such a way that you're going to do that, have that buyer attraction. Buyer attraction to me is where we should be focusing our time. Listings are great, but listings cost you money to keep on the books. And if we don't have that buyer pipeline, you're kind of missing a piece of the puzzle. Mason Meyer just had his first big closing. What day was that? Monday. So congrats, Mason. So he and I were visiting about how to use that as an incubator for more business. So if you have had closings, and even if you had a closing 6 months ago, I know Leanne said somebody in her market is posting closings that they did a long time ago just to show potential clients that they're busy. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but you can tell that same story over and over. Last week, the partners and Jessica, Shayla, and myself met with a consultant on what do we want our marketing footprint to look like and how we can tweak and add things. And my number one priority is lead generation, because we can post just listed, just sold, cool, high five. But how do you take that closing and turn it into more opportunities for deals? And even if it's been over the last couple of years, let's look at the closings that you've had or the clients that you worked with. Let's create a story about them. Let's create a blog that posts to your website. Let's share that blog out through a link on your Instagram story. Let's post it on LinkedIn, Google, and also stagger it out so that that sort of buzz keeps going. So like we're going to pull landowners around Mason's closing. We're going to send a pattern of success letter to those people. We can probably do some Facebook targeted ads and try to get in front of those people who might be in the same boat that his sellers were. I know Christopher had an estate closing that was some heirs and nobody really got along, and navigating that. Well, that's a story a lot of people can identify with. I have a half sibling and some ex-step siblings and all kinds of fun stuff. When it gets to that point, I would probably sell to not own property with somebody that I don't like. A lot of people are in that same boat. So how do you put that story in front of a potential client and be consistent with that? And while I know this spreadsheet probably makes y'all rather go to the dentist or something, it just helps you stay front of mind with where you can focus your efforts and where something you might think is a small thing might end up turning into a big thing. Anytime we go somewhere, I'm always meeting somebody or try to connect. Christopher and I did a feral hog workshop last week, which sounds super boring, but there was about 15 landowners there. Cost us $15 to bring water and drinks. Come to find out, I found out who my new annoying neighbor is that bought 5 years ago that blows up things with tannerite all the time and shakes people's windows. And he needed to tell me in his city slicker boots that he's this big cattle rancher. And, you know, sometimes you also meet the people you don't want to know, but I was nice and cordial to him. However, I figured out why he moved to Kingsbury, and he actually lived in Wimberley and moved to Kingsbury to get bigger land, and he bought it from a friend, yada, yada. But again, it's just putting your name in front of people. And the workshop was actually pretty interesting. And they talked about that new hog remediation kaput where you put the stuff in the feed. So it was kind of interesting. So reach out to your county extension agents, see what kind of workshops they're having. A lot of them are doing the screwworm topics right now. That's great to be at. They do a lot of landowner workshops, consumer workshops, all those things. So just lots of ways you can check your box for your 30-day challenge and be consistent in your marketing. Krista, have y'all like nailed down y'all's sphere of influence and how you're marketing and talking to them and staying front of mind?
It's ever evolving, but that was kind of our goal this year with we saw the business coach that we use for my team. And so, yeah, we really built out our database of our sphere, and we're sending out at least monthly emails, if not bi-monthly, kind of depending on what we have going. And I think kind of just like Kyle's saying, I can't make a direct connection of where leads are coming, but I think just staying front of mind with people via email and social media, we're getting a lot of referrals and a lot of just traction. So you just keep doing it, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Keep on keeping on.
Well, you literally never know. I know when I was in sales and title, the agents that I met with one time at a workshop that I did a class for would send me deals. And then the person to I threw them a baby shower wouldn't send me a deal. And so you can never quite track. I'm still hurt if you can't tell. You can't always track where things come from. And it's hard because we're not making widgets, just like input in, you get an output. You can put in all these things and get nothing. And then 5 years from now, that turns into something big. So stay in front of mind with all those people. If you haven't downloaded your contacts from your phone, it was almost like a go back in time, Back to the Future. Michael J. Fox was in my phone because I've had the same iTunes account since I had a different last name. And I just really forgot about all the different random people that I knew and the amount of contacts I had. So there's an app that you can download. I shared it in our group. It'll put it on a CSV file, whatever information you have in that contact, it'll download into an Excel sheet, and then you can upload that straight into Bold Trail. Obviously, you need to go through that because people have died or quit doing whatever they were doing. You need to update it, check in on them. But it was a great memory jogger because a lot of those people aren't people I connected with on Facebook. Their names are also saved different than what their names really are. It's like Joe the plumber or, marry the accountant, whatever it is. So if you haven't downloaded your phone contacts, so much of what we do is right here, and definitely take some time to do that. And that will check a lot of boxes on your prospecting challenge. That's going to remind you all the people that you need to stay front of mind with, and that you could tweak and add to your SOI, and then add those to your drip campaigns and things that you're doing. Anybody have any other questions? Everybody's eyes down here is glazed over.
What are some good podcasts or books that everybody's listening to right now while you're traveling?
Oh my gosh, really? I have a bunch. The one that
What's your favorite one?
I just sent one to Kenneth. The one I'm listening to right now, like, because I'm trying to rethink my money and my budget, and or maybe you don't know, maybe you didn't get financial help, and it's not a lot of stuff we learned in school. So, and I was a teaching degree, so I didn't get a lot of math classes anyway. But I stumbled upon this book called Simple Money, Rich Life. But what I liked is at the beginning, it talked about kind of your budgeting and what you want to spend money on. But then it also talks about like doing business that you really like. And if you're not doing something you're happy about, you're probably not going to make money anyway. But then it just kind of got into more like the business stuff that I like, that is less about the money part. And so I kind of like that. So I sent it to like Annabelle and a few other people. So that's what I'm on right now.
What was the name of it again?
Simple Money, Rich Life.
Awesome.
It was published by Dave Ramsey Publishing, so it does have a Christian background. It does talk about giving, so kind of be prepared for that. At first, so if you're conflicted about giving, it's kind of a good book to listen to as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
It was really good.
Yeah, I've had a lot lately too.
I've listened to a lot of things.
Mostly I listen to true crime, but I do listen to
Well, that fanatical processing that you
Yeah.
recommended was really good. So I get my mind back going, and from coaching. It's nothing. A lot of it's like
old school.
rocket science, and it's nothing new. It's just getting your hearing it and getting your mind, but also kind of a process to do it. So if you're struggling like how to get a class center, go back to that fanatical prospecting.
Big Money Energy I thought was good. I like the fanatical prospecting too, like you said, because we are in an interesting market right now, and it just helps you get your mind out of where you are and just get back to work, right? Just do the things that you know work and get out of your own head and out of your own way.
The hard stuff you need to hear, like if you're not going to do this, then you're not going to get that. And sometimes I need to keep that back over and over. Bro. That's your alarm clock.
The gratitude formula was good. Buy back your time, I really liked.
Yeah, that's a lot.
The Course in Miracles, I don't know. There's a lot. Emotional Intelligence, Turning Pro.
Necessary and
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence.
You should be nice to me. I'm your ride home. Well, Marble Falls team, do y'all have anything else y'all want to add? Coach Marty, you can't. I know.
No, I'll just say, I am meeting with a guy tomorrow about some properties there in Granite Shoals, and looking forward to meeting with him. And, again, and as I plan for that, it's the whole scenario of just making sure they understand the market is the way it is right now, and that we're going to work through that and do the very best we can. But I think they need to know that up front.
Definitely. And no matter what the market is, people are still going to have to buy and sell no matter what. I bought my first house in 99, and I don't remember what the interest rate was, but I know it was higher than it is now, but I didn't know any different. So I just bought a house. People have to sell right now. So we have to keep turning rocks over and just finding those opportunities, even if it looks a little different than we think we want our marketing to be at. So. What?
I said that's when I was born.
I had a child in 99, so you can be my kid. Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much. We're going to wrap up here, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye, Marty.
Uh,
Bye.